I found the phone when Sophie was in the shower. I only reached for her purse because I needed the car keys. The purse was soft leather and smelled like jasmine. Something buzzed inside that I did not expect. It was not her usual phone. It was small and black and cool under my hand. The screen lit up, private number incoming. I stared. My heart started to beat fast like a drum. I should have put it down. I should have walked away. Instead, I answered. My thumb shook as I tapped the green button. A man's voice slid through like a knife. "You were amazing last night," he said, quiet and steady. I froze. Heat left my face. My hand went cold. The voice was calm and sure, like a man who owned secrets. "Who is this?" I asked. My voice sounded thin, even to me. The man laughed softly. He said, "Stop pretending, Sophie." Then the line clicked. Silence replaced the voice. The bathroom fan hummed. Water pounded the tile. I stared at the phone in my palm as if it might explain itself. Instead, it only glowed. I dropped it without meaning to. It hit the carpet with a small sound that felt huge. The shower stopped. Sophie started humming. She walked out wrapped in a towel like nothing had changed. She smiled at me and said, "Morning, babe." I held the black phone to my chest like a stone and forced a smile that cracked inside. Every small thing after that felt thin and false. The joke, she told that breakfast tasted like salt. The way she brushed her hair looked practiced. I sat there and listened to the ordinary noises of a home that suddenly felt like a stage. I kept the phone. I did not show it to her. I did not know then if I was protecting her or saving myself. I pressed the secret phone into my pocket, like a secret map. It buzzed again later, but I did not answer. My hands would not stop trembling. I heard a tiny voice in my head say, "Find out." Before I could plan, before I could breathe, that voice became the first step into a life I did not recognize. Hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. I waited until night because day felt too public. During the day, Sophie moved like a person in a good play. Smooth practice lines, perfect timing. I asked her casually, "Hey, you got a new phone?" Her fork stopped midair. For half a second, she froze like someone who had been caught rearranging a set. Then she said, "Work issued. Temporary." Her voice came too fast, too neat. I believe her as much as I believed the trick. That night, I could not sleep. The black phone had a sticker on the case I had not noticed before. It was a small rectangle of clear tape with numbers written in permanent marker. At first, it looked like nothing. Then I turned it over. The 4 digits were familiar in a way that hit my stomach. Her birth date reversed. I did not know why she would put that. But when I typed those numbers into the locked phone, the screen blinked and opened. I sat on the edge of our bed, heart punching my ribs. The phone hummed into life and filled the dark with words. There were messages stacked like secret mail. Simple lines. "Last night was magic. Next weekend, the cabin? Don't call this number unless safe." The messages sounded like breadcrumbs. As I read, one name kept popping up in the text. Only the letter M. No full name, just a single bold letter. Photos lived in a folder named away. They were fuzzy and too small. Hotel selfies and dark drinks. One image made my throat close. Our wedding ring lay alone on a hotel nightstand, light catching on its band like a very small sun. For a second, I thought my eyes were lying. Some messages were hand-typed love notes. Others were practical. Timer set. Waiting on the bank. Bring cash. Hotel room 312. The words were both casual and full of plan. It felt like watching someone build a map of a future I had not drawn. I found an app with a tiny red and a name that felt wrong. Recordmate. It had a long row of voice memos. Hundreds. I tapped the top one, and Sophie's voice came through like a thin thread. "He's starting to suspect. I'll handle him." My hands fell limp and slammed quiet. A cold numbness spread from my head down to my toes. The world tilted. I did what any man who loved too much might do. I copied everything to a flash drive. I did not know yet if this would save me or destroy me, but I could not leave the evidence to vanish. I could not breathe the next morning. Sophie hummed in the shower, and I stood at the sink, pretending to shave. The secret phone sat on the counter like a sleeping creature. I kept looking at it like someone might shout answers if I stared long enough. In the shower, she sang an old song we both liked. Her voice sounded soft and safe and terrible. I tried to act normal. At breakfast, I made coffee and poured her too much milk in her cup, like some small, steady habit. I asked about her day, and she said, "I have a few clients downtown." Her eyes flicked to me for less than a second before she looked away. I put my hand over hers and felt the towel's damp warmth and the soft tremor of a different life. I covered suspicion with small talk. She told me to work on the new proposal and said she loved me. I took the phone to the garage and locked it in my toolbox. I told myself I would not open it again until I had a plan, but the phone thudded inside like an angry thing and buzzed with secrets even when silent. When I drove that day, I kept thinking about small moments. Her laugh last week, the way she once leaned on my shoulder when our first car broke down. Those things felt real and fragile and worth saving. Yet the phone's memo said something else had been true. That evening I gave myself permission to look again. I listened to another memo. Sophie's whisper rose and fell like a secret. "We need Liam," she said. "He owes me." She spoke like a politician who had rehearsed every line. She said, "After he signs, Liam will handle the transfers. Marcus will make sure the trail is clean." My hands found the toolbox, and my teeth found worry. Marcus. Liam. Two names I did not know how to hold. I called Liam. He was my best friend since college, a man I trusted with my first paycheck and my worst nights. My voice sounded like something from the bottom of a well. "You busy?" I asked. He said, "Always, Jack." "What's up?" I lied about nothing and asked about small things, then said things I did not mean. "Hey, can you help trace a number later?" He said yes without hesitation. I said thanks and hung up and sat on the floor under a lamp and let the house shrink around me. I had a name and a hole in my life. I did not yet know how wide it went. Liam's help felt like a lifeline. He worked in IT and had a skill I thought was practical and clean. He always said numbers were honest and that computers kept neat records. I told him only the truth I could. There was a private number calling Sophie's phone, and I wanted to know where it came from. He agreed to look into it, without pressure or questions. I felt gratitude like a small protective coat. When Liam texted back the next day, my hand shook as I read. He found the number and traced a ping near our street last week. He wrote one line, Marcus Linton, private investigator, ping near your house. The word investigator made something in my stomach drop. Why would a PI call Sophie? For a moment, I let myself imagine sensible explanations. Maybe work hired him for a case, maybe she helped a client. But the messages and recordings kept playing in my head in a loop. He's starting to suspect. I'll handle him. Liam helped cover your trail. The memos felt like knives. That night I sat in my car with the engine off and watched our street. A silver Audi rolled down the lane and slowed like it wanted to be seen. A man inside glanced down at a phone and then drove away. I took a picture of the license plate and the man's face through my zoom. The plate matched the one Liam had sent later. Marcus Linton. My chest froze with the image of someone watching us like a book. I followed Sophie one afternoon when she left for work. She did not go downtown. She met Marcus in a coffee shop 2 blocks from our house. They sat close and talked in low voices like they were reading from a secret script. I watched through a rain-speckled window and took photos as if collecting proof could stitch my heart back together. Marcus slid an envelope to Sophie. She tucked it into her bag with fingers that did not tremble. Back home, the house felt like a diorama I no longer recognized. I found a note from Sophie that said errands and chores and love you all in her neat hand. I kept pretending to believe. I did not answer my phone when Marcus called that night. I put the black phone back in the toolbox and told myself I would not sleep until I knew. But sleep found me anyway, and dreams turned the small clues into loud nightmares. I could not keep pretending I did not know. The envelope Sophie took from Marcus sat in my head like a key I could not fit in any lock. That night, I opened her closet because secrets live in small places. Behind shoes and sweaters, I found a small metal safe wedged behind boxes, like a heart hidden in a false wall. My hands shook as I pried it open. Inside, cash folded neat like quiet confessions, several fake IDs with names I did not know, and a prepaid travel card loaded with $25,000. The number on the card screamed a future I had not seen. I sat on the bedroom floor and read everything like a man doing math with his life. I felt foolish and furious and small. On the black phone, more memos waited. One voice memo made my knees go weak. Sophie's voice whispered, "Once he signs the papers, we'll disappear." Make it look like a nervous breakdown. The sound of her voice saying, "We'll disappear," felt like someone erasing whole years of me. I did not want to believe. I wanted to find an explanation that kept our life. But the photos of our wedding band on a hotel nightstand, the cash, the fake IDs, these were not mistakes. They were tools. I thought of Brianna and the future we built. I thought of all the small moments I had trusted and given without thinking. I felt betrayed in a place words do not reach. I called Liam because he was the only one I thought I could trust. I told him the bare bones and asked if he could trace payments and check company files. He said yes in a voice that sounded too calm. Later, when I pushed him for details, he became quiet. I did not know then how deep the silence would cut. He told me he could help with tracing numbers, but was vague about transfers and payments. I felt my world get smaller and harder around the edges. I burned the safe's contents into my memory and copied the travel card info into my notes. I tucked a folded copy of a memo into my wallet like a talisman. I needed proof, and I needed a plan. I could feel the quiet shape of something forming inside me. Not revenge yet, but a slow steel. I would not let my life be picked apart by people I loved or called friends. I did not know the cost of what I would become, but I knew I would not fold. I remember the first time I heard the word handle and felt my stomach drop. Recordmate had hundreds of memos. Each one felt like a tiny nail in a board I had built my life on. I played another memo late that night after Sophie slept. Her voice was low and sharp, like someone reading from a plan. "He's starting to suspect. I'll handle him," she said. I felt cold and hot at once. My hands shook so badly I almost did not hold the phone. I needed more than whispers. I needed names and places and proof. So I did what I promised myself I would not do. I followed her the next day. She said she was meeting a client downtown. She left with a small bag and a smile that fit too well. I waited in the car a block away and watched. She met Marcus like old friends. They hugged like they had known secrets together for a long time. Marcus slid an envelope across the table. Sophie tucked it inside her bag with calm fingers. The envelope was small, but heavy with meaning. I watched their faces. They talked in fast little sentences that meant more than words. Then Sophie left alone. I took photos from the safety of my car, and my hands did not shake when I uploaded them. I wanted to know what was inside the envelope. I wanted to know why Sophie had a safe with cash and fake IDs. I wanted to know why a private investigator was involved. That night, I listened to memos until my eyes burned. One said plainly, "Liam helped cover your trail." Liam, my best friend. The name felt like a kicked stone rolling and rolling until it hit something fragile. I sat on the kitchen floor in the dark and felt the house close in. I had to talk to Liam, but I felt like a man walking into a room where the floor could collapse. I called him and kept my voice steady. "Can you trace a number for me?" I said like it was nothing. He said, "Of course." When he came over that evening, I poured whiskey and pretended to listen to stories about work and old nights out. He smiled and joked and leaned in, and I watched him as if I had never really seen him before. He assures me he would always help. His eyes were steady and friendly, but I held a small, cold piece of proof in my pocket. I wanted to ask everything at once, and also want to keep my mouth shut. I decided to wait. Waiting felt cruel and strong at the same time. After Liam left that night, I did not sleep. Every small sound in the house felt like a code I did not know. The black phone sat on the kitchen table like a quiet animal. I had copied his files to a flash drive and hidden that drive in the attic, inside an old box of tax returns. I told myself it was for safety. I told myself it was for truth. I told myself I would not be a man who ran without evidence. The next day, I watched Sophie more than I watched the road. She called the kids, told them small lies about work, and asked about dinner ideas as if she had never planned anything other than family. She moved like a person walking on a floor with weak boards. She messaged someone with the letter M like it was a code for a safe place. My hands burned when my phone buzzed with another memo. Sophie's voice said, "After he signs the papers, we'll disappear." I felt like the room had gone empty. I needed help beyond my own head. I met with a lawyer one afternoon in a small office above a bakery. The lawyer asked questions like she had a map of rules in her head. I told her what I had without emotion. She nodded. She said it was smart to gather proof. She said the recordings could help, but warned about privacy laws and tricky rules. If she recorded private conversations by trick, it could be complicated, she said. I listened like a man learning to read a new language. Then I drove to my company late at night and sat in the office after everyone left. I opened a laptop and checked money flows and account access. Little things stood out: automatic transfers and a new vendor added a payroll in December that did not exist. I printed pages and made neat stacks like a man who needed order. I felt angry in a way that was almost silent. It was not a hot anger. It was a cold, steady build like water wearing down stone. That night, I put the red folder on my desk. It felt heavy. Inside were photos, memos, copies from the secret phone, bank printouts, and a list of names: Marcus, Liam, a shell company with a name that looked like a joke. I labeled the folder Insurance in bold pen. I slid another copy into a safety deposit box and mailed one copy to my self-registered mail, so the timestamp would be proof. Doing those small legal things made me feel less like a man trapped in a dream and more like someone who could act with a plan. I still loved Sophie, in a raw, slow style that made the clean facts of the folder ache. I kept hoping there was a mistake. Maybe Marcus was a client. Maybe Liam had help without knowing the plan. Maybe the cash was for a secret good reason. But each memo, each photo, cut those hopeful threads. I had to accept that love could be true and still be used like a tool. I met Marcus once on purpose. I set it up as if by accident outside the coffee shop where he and Sophie often met. He did not recognize me at first. He wore a jacket that hid his shape and eyes like a man who watched too much. I asked about a car I thought I saw. He gave small answers that did not fit. I asked if he did PI work. He said he did and then said, "I do it for many reasons." His voice had a snap like paper. He smiled and told me about being hired for sensitive work. I asked if he would ever share his clients. He answered like a man who had a rule book. No. Then I asked if he had ever worked with someone named Sophie. He paused just long enough for my heart to drop. Then he said, "I never discuss clients." He smiled again and walked off like a man who leaves a room already out the door. I took a picture of his face and his hands and saved them with notes. I asked Sophie point blank the next morning, "Who hired Marcus?" She blinked like a woman learning a new trick and said, "He's helping with a neighbor's case." She sounded small and frightened. The story changed over the next week. Once it was a distant client. Another time it was a friend in trouble. I kept asking and she kept answering in shifting truths. The safe, the fake IDs, the cash. Each lie fit together like parts of a machine. I called Liam again that week and asked more about file transfers. He hesitated and then said he had seen weird entries but thought they were billing errors. I wanted to believe him. Part of me still wanted to help him and pull him out of whatever hole he was in, but the memos with his name in them sat in my head like nails. He had been involved in some way. I felt betrayal like the slow cracking of glass. I watched Sophie and the people around her change like chapters of a book I no longer recognized. Friends grew distant, and some faces closed like shuttered windows. I felt the world tighten around my chest. I had the folder, but I needed more. I needed to see money move and to stop it before someone else took what we had built. One evening I sat at my desk and drafted a plan. I would not act cruelly. I would act cleanly. I contacted a trusted bank manager I had known for years and told him the broad truth without anger. Only facts and a request. Check for unusual transfers, freeze suspicious accounts, and set alerts for any new vendors. He did not ask for proof. He acted like old friends sometimes do when trust has been earned. Within a day, alerts popped up showing the shell company receiving a transfer from our payroll account. I felt cold and steady and ready. I also found out that the travel card had been used to book 2 one-way tickets to Canada, both in Sophie's name, with cash withdrawals scheduled for days after the planned divorce service. The tickets meant they planned to run and hide. I printed those tickets and added them to the folder. I felt like a man collecting the last pieces of a puzzle that spelled escape. Then I sat across the kitchen table from Sophie over dinner like nothing was wrong. She served lasagna and told me about small things in her day. I asked softly about the card and the trips. She lied and said it was for a friend. Her eyes flinched. Then she steadied like an actor hitting a mark. My hand brushed hers. I felt her pulse jump and knew my time to act was near. I did not speak of threats. I spoke of calm things, of legal steps we might need to take together. She nodded as if she had not heard the name Marcus or the list of memos stacked in my head. Night felt heavy the week. I decided to gather everything into one place. The red folder sat on the counter, like a small and dangerous thing. I had copies in a safe deposit box, an attic, and my lawyer's office. I had photos, bank printouts, recorded memos, and evidence of the shell company. I felt a strange peace, the peace of a man who had made a decision and followed through. I called Liam that night and asked him to meet me at the bar we used to go to. He arrived late, breathing a little hard like someone who had been running. He hugged me and said things about old times. I kept smiling and kept a small recorder in my pocket, like a secret heartbeat. When the wine loosened words, Liam talked about money and how people promise things they cannot keep. He was careful at first. Then his eyes flicked away and he said, "She promised me a cut." I didn't know it would go this far. I felt the floor drop and then solidify. When I asked him how far, he told me about transfers and login codes and an evening where he had typed letters and changed a name on a file. He cried like a man who had broken something he loved without meaning to. I asked for details and he gave names and dates. I felt anger like a cold draft pushed through me, and then something else. Pity. My best friend had been bought by promises and fear. He had helped move paper, but he had not started the plan. That night, I gave him a choice. He could help me set things right, tell what he knew to the bank, and undo as much as he could, or he could run and keep his part. He looked at me like someone asking how much a man was worth. He chose to help. We planned how to get logs, how to trace transfers, and how to quietly freeze card without panic. Liam's hand shook. I didn't say, "I told you so." I only said, "Thank you." I felt the slow motion of things starting to move. Evidence would become action. Friends would choose sides. The black phone in my toolbox buzzed once, like a small animal, reminding me it was still alive. I closed the toolbox and breathed. The plan was not revenge yet. It was protection and truth. The rest would come when it needed to. The next morning, sunlight felt wrong, too bright for what I carried inside. I kept thinking about Liam's confession, the trembling in his voice, the shame in his eyes. I still couldn't decide if he deserved pity or punishment. The black phone lay silent in my toolbox, but I knew silence could mean danger. I unlocked it again and checked the call log. The last incoming call had a location tag. I traced it through Liam's tracker app. The ping came from 2 streets away. My throat tightened. Whoever Marcus was. He'd been near my home again. I parked my car at the corner and waited. At 11:17 a.m., a silver Audi appeared, the same one I'd seen before. Marcus stepped out, checked his phone, and glanced at my house. Then he took pictures. I raised my phone and took pictures of him taking pictures of me. The loop felt cruelly funny in a dead way. I followed him as quietly as I could when he left. He drove to a bank downtown, stayed 10 minutes, then walked into an office building. The nameplate read Linton Investigations. Inside, through the glass, I saw Sophie sitting opposite him. She wasn't surprised to see him. She handed him another envelope. When I got home, I called Liam. "He's still working with her," I said. "They met again today." Liam sighed. "Then she's deep in it, Jack." That's not a fling. That's coordination. He helped me trace Marcus's business filings. What we found made my chest go hollow. His firm specialized in asset verification for divorce settlements. I understood now. Sophie was building a case before she filed, painting me as unstable, planning to take everything I owned. I printed the business record and added it to the red folder. Beneath the fear, something colder took root. I had evidence, allies, and purpose. She had no idea how close the walls were closing. That night, Sophie cooked my favorite meal, as if her smile could erase what I'd seen. I sat across from her, ate quietly, and thought, let her act. Let her think the stage is still hers. For the next few days, I played along. Sophie talked about vacations, about how maybe we should take a break from stress. I nodded, listening to every lie with the calm of someone studying an enemy's rhythm. Liam helped me install a hidden camera in my home office. I didn't tell him where I'd hide the memory card. Some trust never came back. Then, one afternoon, I saw Marcus again, this time not in his Audi, but walking out of the lawyer's building across from City Hall. He looked tense, checking his phone. I zoomed in from across the street and caught the name on the folder he carried. Cole and Reeves Family Law. My stomach flipped. Divorce lawyers. That evening, Sophie came home later than usual. I asked, rough day? She said, meetings ran long. I said, at Cole and Reeves? Her eyes snapped up wide, caught. For a second she froze, then smiled too fast. How do you know that name? She asked. I drove past. I lied. Recognize your car. Her fingers drummed the counter. You're being paranoid again, she said softly. I smiled. Maybe. Want some tea? Inside, I was memorizing her tone, the way she leaned away slightly, the flicker of nerves. Every sign confirmed what I already knew. She was ready to file. I called my lawyer that night. She's preparing divorce proceedings. I said, I want to preempt her. My lawyer, an older man named Harvey, told me to gather solid evidence before moving. If she files first, she controls the story, he said. I told him about the red folder, the recordings, the memos. He whistled low. You might not just defend yourself. You might bury her case entirely. At midnight, I replayed one of the recordings again, the one where Sophie whispered, once he signs the papers, we'll disappear. I looked around our house, our photos, our furniture, our dog asleep on the rug, and thought she wanted all this gone. The next morning, I told myself, no more guessing. Time to see exactly how deep the lie ran. The plan came together like blueprints for a building I never meant to design. First, confirm motive. Second, expose method. Third, control timing. I wrote these steps on a sticky note and hid it behind a picture frame in my office. Liam sent me a message. Got something. Marcus's emails use a shared cloud link. Passwords is car plate reversed. I typed it in. A folder opened. Photos, receipts, invoices. One document froze me. Asset acquisition plan. Subject, Jack Howard. My name. My accounts. My properties. All listed with market values and notes. Transfer after separation. Confirm bank routing through Liam. I sat back in my chair, dizzy. Sophie hadn't hired Marcus to investigate me. She'd hired him to steal my life cleanly. I printed everything and called Harvey. He told me to keep quiet until we could file a counterclaim. Don't show emotion, he said. Let her think she's safe. That became my armor. That evening, Sophie came home early and hugged me. You've been distant, she said. I hugged her back. My smile felt like paper. She whispered, I just want us to be okay. I wanted to believe her, but her purse brushed against my leg, and I felt the hard rectangle of the black phone. Lies weighed more than truth. Later, when she slept, I checked her new emails. There was an appointment confirmation from Cole and Reeves for Thursday. Initial filing consultation. My heartbeat slowed until it was steady again. I'd be there first. The next morning, Harvey and I filed our own petition. Defensive, factual, backed by evidence. He smiled after stamping the papers. She'll think you're clueless until she sees this. That night, I lay awake listening to Sophie breathe, wondering if she dreamed of her new life already. Part of me wanted to shake her awake and ask why. But another part, the colder, stronger part, knew the answer didn't matter anymore. Revenge had a schedule now. Thursday came fast. Sophie left early, dressed in her favorite navy blazer, the one she wore when she wanted to look powerful. She kissed my cheek lightly and said, "Don't wait up. Big client day." I watched her drive away. 10 minutes later, I followed. Outside Colin Reeves, I parked where she couldn't see me. She walked inside, clutching a folder I recognized, tan with gold clips, probably the same one Marcus had given her. I sat there for 40 minutes, watching her through the glass, laughing politely with a lawyer. When she came out, her smile looked brighter, almost relieved. She texted someone. I took a photo of that moment, labeling it after filing. Harvey called me that afternoon. "They'll get served with our counterclaim tomorrow. You're legally protected now." His calm voice steadied me. At dinner, Sophie was glowing. "Work went great," she said. I nodded. "I'm glad." She poured wine. "You should trust me more, Jack." I raised my glass. "You're right. Trust is everything." That night, after she fell asleep, I unlocked her secret phone again. A new message from M blinked. "Stage 1 done. He'll sign by next week." Another from Liam weeks earlier. "All transfers ready." I copied them, added timestamps, and uploaded them to a secure cloud folder titled Truth. I sat in the dark, thinking of the years we'd shared, the birthdays, the laughs, the promises. Every memory felt borrowed from a better man's life. I whispered to the empty room, "You think I'm a fool in your story, Sophie, but I wrote new chapters you haven't read yet." When dawn came, I didn't feel anger anymore, just focus. I put on my best suit, packed a red folder, and met Harvey at the courthouse. The papers she planned to use against me would meet their mirror image, mine, full of proof. If you've ever been betrayed this deep, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. Friday morning, the sheriff's car pulled up while Sophie was watering her plants. She smiled at the officer, still in her robe, until he handed her the envelope. Her face changed color as she read the heading. Counterclaim. Petition for protective injunction against fraudulent asset transfer. She looked up at me through the window. For the first time, her eyes showed fear. I stepped outside calmly. "Everything okay?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "What is this?" I said softly, "Just paperwork." "You started it." She stormed inside, phone in hand, whispering furiously to someone, probably Marcus. I stayed on the porch, listening to the wind, feeling something like peace. Hours later, she came out shaking. "You think you're clever?" she said. "You ruined everything." I said, "No, Sophie, you did that when you picked lies over love." She packed a bag that afternoon. I let her. I didn't stop her or ask where she was going. I only took a quiet picture of the car, leaving the driveway. The house felt larger after she left, like walls could breathe again. That night, Liam texted, "Marcus panicking. Wants to talk." I didn't answer. I poured a drink and watched the lights outside fade. My hands stopped shaking for the first time in weeks. In bed, the space beside me stayed cold, but it no longer felt empty. It felt honest. I thought about everything I'd lost and realized the worst part wasn't betrayal. It was how ordinary it looked. The next morning, Harvey called. "She'll try something else, Jack. Stay ready." I smiled faintly. I've been ready since the day I found that phone. Revenge wasn't loud or wild. It was silent, measured, like bricks stacking into a wall no one could climb. And I still had more bricks to lay. Saturday morning came with rain. I sat by the window, watching drops slide down the glass, each one steady, patient, like the plan forming in my head. Sophie hadn't come home. I didn't expect her to. Her side of the closet hung half empty. The air smelled of her perfume and lies. Around noon, Liam showed up. His eyes were red, his hands unsteady. "She's losing it," he said, stepping inside. Marcus told her the bar association's sniffing around his firm. Something about fake documents. That made me pause. You knew about those? I asked quietly. Liam swallowed. Not until now. I think she forged my e-signature on a few transfers to make it look like I was in charge. He rubbed his temples. I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't think she'd... I stopped him with a raised hand. You helped her once. You can help me now. We spent the afternoon gathering everything. Emails, receipts, call logs. I made copies of every piece that tied her to Marcus and sent them to Harvey. The pile grew until it filled the table like the bones of a broken plan. That night, I called Sophie. Her number rang 4 times before she answered. What do you want? She hissed. I said, the truth. Silence. Then a brittle laugh. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. I said, try me. She hung up. I stared at the phone. The screen reflected my face, tired, sharper than before. I realized revenge wasn't about hurting her anymore. It was about ending the game cleanly. When the rain stopped, I went outside. The world smelled like wet earth and new beginnings. Somewhere out there, Sophie was panicking, Marcus was running, and I, finally, was breathing. Inside, the red folder sat waiting on my desk. Its edges were frayed now, like a scar healing. I ran my hand over it and whispered. Soon, Monday started like any other. Coffee, headlines, the dog scratching at the door. But under it all, tension buzzed. Harvey called early. Jack, brace yourself, he said. Her lawyer filed a restraining order request. I laughed softly. For what? For financial abuse and intimidation. So that was her next move. I thanked him and told him not to worry. I already had her voice on tape, saying the plan out loud. At noon, I went to the courthouse. Sophie was there, sitting beside a new lawyer, her expression rehearsed. She looked smaller somehow, wrapped in a pale suit that made her seem fragile. The judge called her forward. Mrs. Howard, he said, you claim your husband controls finances to manipulate you? Sophie nodded, tears appearing on cue. Yes, Your Honor. He froze my accounts, restricted my cards. Before she could continue, Harvey stood. Your Honor, may I present Exhibit A? He plugged in a USB drive. Sophie's voice filled the courtroom. Once he signs the papers, we'll disappear. Make it look like a nervous breakdown. The room went silent. Sophie's tears stopped instantly. The judge frowned. Mrs. Howard, is that your voice? Her lawyer stammered. We were unaware of... The judge raised a hand. Case dismissed. I'm referring this for investigation. I didn't smile. I only looked at her. Really looked. Past the makeup, past the act. She stared down, eyes empty, as if the truth had finally shown its face and she didn't recognize it. Outside the courthouse, rain began again. Harvey clapped my shoulder. That's one wall down. I nodded. Plenty more to go. I went home to silence. For the first time, it wasn't heavy, it was clean. By midweek, Marcus's world began to crumble. Harvey sent word that the investigation into his firm uncovered doctor financial records. 3 clients had already filed complaints. Liam's confession added fuel. I heard through the grapevine that Marcus's office was raided, his computer seized. The man who'd once laughed at me through a phone call was now on the evening news, covering his face with a coat. Sophie tried calling that night. I let it ring. When she texted, can we talk? I simply replied, everything you say will be used as evidence. She didn't answer. Liam showed up again the next day, pale but steady. You were right, he said. Marcus kept backup drives in his trunk. The investigators found them. He handed me a flash drive. I copied one before they took everything. You should see this. I opened the files. Dozens of PDFs, contracts, payment plans, emails between Sophie and Marcus. Every line documented how they planned to transfer my company's assets to her new shell business. At the top of one file, Phase 3 mental health narrative. They'd planned to label me unstable to gain sympathy and control of my accounts. I sat in silence for a long time. Not sadness, just disbelief at the precision of her betrayal. Then I stood, printed everything, and added it to the red folder. That night, I poured 2 glasses of whiskey, One for me, one for the man I used to be. I toasted him quietly. You were trusting, I said, and you learned. Revenge wasn't fire anymore. It was ice. Controlled, sharp, permanent. The weeks that followed were strange. My house grew quieter, but not lonely. I threw away the flowers Sophie left wilting in a vase. I donated her clothes, her perfume, her designer shoes. Each act felt like peeling away layers of poison. Liam kept helping. He testified willingly, admitting his role and exposing theirs. Harvey handled the filings, calm and efficient. I kept my days full of work. The men at the construction site treated me like normal. They didn't ask questions. That silence was its own kind of kindness. One morning, I received a letter from the bank. It confirmed full ownership of all company assets under my name only. No more hidden accounts. No shared access. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the red folder. That folder had become more than evidence. It was a story of survival. Sophie, on the other hand, had lost everything. The news spread fast. Her accounts frozen, her lawyer dropping her case, her PI partner facing disbarment. Even her friend from the club stopped returning her calls. One evening, she showed up at the house. She looked different, smaller, thinner, a little lost. "Jack," she said softly, "can we talk?" I stood at the door, blocking the entrance. "You can talk," I said. Tears welled up in her eyes. I made mistakes. I just wanted money, freedom, a new life. I asked. She looked down. A way out. I said, "You found one. Stay out." She nodded, turned away, and walked into the night. I watched her disappear down the street, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger, only relief. A month later, the court finalized everything. My name cleared, my assets secured, my life mine again. Harvey smiled when he handed me the papers. "It's over, Jack," he said. But I knew over didn't mean forgotten. The local paper ran a small story about the case. Businessman clears name in fraud plot. They didn't print the details, just enough to let people guess. The ones who mattered knew the truth. Liam started a new job out of town. He called to say goodbye. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said. I told him, "Then earn it by being better." He thanked me and hung up. As for Sophie, last I heard she was working at a small boutique 2 cities away. No Audi, no designer clothes, no audience for her lies. Sometimes I wondered if she ever thought of calling again, but I never checked. The black phone still sat in my toolbox, turned off but charged. I kept it not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder. One buzz, one voice had changed everything. That night, I walked through the house I'd built with my own hands. Every wall, every beam, every nail was mine again. I poured a glass of whiskey, sat by the window, and listened to the quiet. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. I thought peace had finally returned, but life has a way of testing if you've really learned. One evening, my phone rang, my real phone, not the black one. The caller ID said, "Unknown." I hesitated, then answered. A man's voice said, "Mr. Howard, this is Detective Brooks with the Financial Crimes Unit. We're finalizing an investigation into Marcus Linton. We thought you should know. Your wife's name appeared in new evidence." My stomach tightened. What kind of evidence? Audio recordings from Linton's car. She left him several messages detailing wire instructions and, discussing making her breakdown look believable. So the plan had gone deeper than I'd even known. Is she being charged? I asked. Possibly. We'll keep you informed. After the call, I sat in the dark for a long time. I wasn't sure if I wanted her punished. Jail wouldn't fix anything. Still, part of me needed the truth on record. Later that night, Liam texted me. Marcus flipped. He's blaming Sophie for everything. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. A week later, Harvey called. "You may be subpoenaed to testify. Just tell the truth. Don't let anger color it." "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "Just done." Still, Part of me felt an ache when I thought of Sophie's voice on those memos. How soft it had been when she'd said my name once. Betrayal didn't erase memories. It only taught you where to store them. That night, I pulled out the black phone again, turned it on, and played the first recording, the one that had shattered everything. I listened calmly this time. It sounded smaller now, weaker, almost pathetic. When it ended, I turned the phone off and put it back in the toolbox for good. I thought revenge would feel like thunder. Instead, it was quiet. The court subpoena arrived the next week. I wasn't nervous, just tired. I'd told my story so many times it felt like a script I'd memorized. Harvey met me outside the courthouse. "Remember," he said, "truth speaks for itself." Inside, the room smelled of paper and tension. Marcus sat at the defense table, thinner, nervous, his once slick hair now dull. Sophie sat behind him, not as a wife or co-conspirator, but as a witness. She wouldn't meet my eyes. When I took the stand, the prosecutor asked simple questions. I answered with facts. How I found the phone, what I heard, the financial trails, the memos. They played a few clips for the record. My voice didn't shake. Then Marcus's lawyer tried to twist things. "Mr. Howard, isn't it true your wife claimed you were controlling?" "Yes," I said. "She also claimed she loved me." A few chuckles broke the tension. The lawyer frowned. "So you deny any abusive behavior?" "I built her a life, not a prison." When it was Sophie's turn to testify, she looked pale. "He's lying," she started, but her voice cracked halfway. I never meant for it to go this far. Her lawyer whispered for her to stop. Marcus glared at her, realizing she'd turned desperate. When it ended, the judge announced that Marcus faced charges for fraud and falsifying evidence. Sophie's charges would be reviewed. Outside, reporters waited. One asked, "Mr. Howard, what do you want now?" "Nothing," I said. "I already got back everything that mattered. Peace." Harvey smiled quietly. "That'll make the front page." I walked away before cameras could steal the moment. I didn't need fame. I'd already won in silence. After the hearing, I stopped checking the news. I didn't need reminders. I filled my days with rebuilding, fixing things at work, spending time with the crew, and visiting my parents' old cabin by the lake. The still water helped me think. One afternoon, Liam called from his new job in Denver. "They offered me a permanent position," he said. "It's honest work this time." I told him I was proud of him. Maybe we both had our second chances. Later that week, I got a letter from the court clerk. Marcus had taken a plea deal, 2 years in prison. Sophie had avoided charges by testifying against him. Her statement included a full confession about her role. Reading it was strange. Seeing my name written in her apology, "Jack didn't deserve this," felt like a ghost brushing past. Harvey said, "You could still sue for damages." I said, "What's the point? I already reclaimed myself." That evening, I walked around the house touching walls I'd built decades ago. They no longer echoed. They just stood, strong and quiet. I opened the red folder one last time. Inside was every scar, every betrayal, every step back toward control. I sealed it, labeled it closed, and locked it in the safe. When I went to bed, I slept through the night for the first time in months. No dreams, no recordings, no whispers. Just quiet breathing and the sound of rain outside. For the first time, the past didn't haunt me. It taught me. Months turned into a year. Life started to look normal again, but nothing about me was the same. I'd learned to listen differently, to tone, to hesitation, to truth. I spent more time outdoors, less time online. One morning, the mailman handed me an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photo. Sophie standing at a small bakery counter somewhere, smiling. On the back, written in blue ink, "I'm sorry. I hope you're happy now." I studied the handwriting. It was hers, careful but soft than before. I didn't feel rage or sadness, just understanding. People don't always change, but they can face what they've done. That was enough. I placed the photo in a drawer and closed it. The story didn't need another ending. Harvey retired soon after, sending me a note that read, "You're my favorite client, because you actually listened." I laughed at that. Listening had saved me. Sometimes at night, I sat on the porch with a drink and thought about the moment it all began. The buzzing phone, the voice that broke my world. I realized that betrayal had been a brutal teacher, but it taught me things I might never have learned otherwise. Patience, caution, truth. The dog barked at fireflies in the yard. The world kept moving, and so did I. On the first anniversary of it all, I drove to the lake alone. The air smelled of pine and water. I brought one thing with me, the black phone. I sat by the shore, skipped a few stones, then placed the phone on the sand. It had been both my curse and my weapon. Every proof, every lie, every twist of fate had started with its buzz. I thought about destroying it, but instead, I powered it on one last time. The screen glowed. No messages, no calls. Just empty. I whispered, "We're done." Then I walked into the shallow water and tossed it out. It sank fast, bubbles rising, gone in seconds. As I watched the ripples fade, I realized revenge had never been about getting even. It was about taking back the power to live without fear. When I got home that evening, I made dinner for one, opened the windows and let the night air in. The house no longer echoed. It sang quietly with peace. Sometimes, silence really is the loudest justice. A few months later, I got a call from a local journalist named Erin. She said, "Mr. Howard, I'm writing a piece about financial deception in marriage. I heard your name mentioned in court records. Would you be willing to share your side?" At first, I said no. I wanted quiet, not headlines. But then I remembered every night I'd spent questioning my own sanity because of lies. Maybe my story could warn someone else. "I'll talk," I said. We met at a diner near the highway. Erin carried a recorder and a small notebook. She listened more than she spoke, rare these days. I told her everything. The hidden phone, the private investigator, the betrayal. I didn't dramatize it. I just told the truth. When she asked how I felt towards Sophie now, I said, "I don't hate her. I just don't miss the version of me who trusted too easily." She smiled sadly. That line will make the article. A week later, the piece came out. Betrayal and Proof, how one man outsmarted a marriage scam. It didn't reveal names, but everyone local knew. People from town stopped me at stores, some to shake my hand, some to share their own stories. It felt strange, being admired for surviving. That night, Sophie called again from a block number. "Why would you tell them?" she asked. "Because truth helps people," I said. "You humiliated me." "No," I replied. "You did that yourself." She hung up. I turned off my phone and sat by the window, feeling neither joy nor guilt. Justice wasn't about ruining her. It was about showing that trust deserved defense. The next morning, Erin emailed me. "Your story reached 2 million views overnight," she wrote. "People are calling you the man who recorded silence into power." I smiled. Maybe that was what revenge really was. Turning pain into something that mattered. Life grew peaceful again until one Friday when Harvey called with a tone I recognized, half warning, half excitement. "Jack, you're about to get a visitor. A lawyer representing a few of Marcus's former clients. They want your testimony to build a bigger case." I agreed to meet them at my office. 3 people arrived, an older couple and a young contractor. They told me how Marcus had stolen retainer fees, forged court documents, and lied about settlements. I listened carefully, then handed them copies of the red folder files that connected him to Sophie's shell company. The woman, Mrs. Grant, grabbed my hand. "You just gave us our life back." When they left, Harvey said, "You realize you just ended Marcus's career completely." I said, "He ended it himself. I just handed him the mirror." News broke a week later. Marcus permanently disbarred, banned from practice, facing civil suits. Seeing his name in the headlines didn't make me cheer. It made me sigh. Another reminder that greed eats everything it touches. That same night, Sophie emailed me from an address I didn't know. I read the article. I know I ruined everything. But you were right about me pretending. I forgot who I was. I hope you find peace. I didn't reply. Sometimes silence is the only answer that teaches. I printed her email added it to the red folder, and sealed it again. That folder had become my monument, not to revenge, but to truth. Later that night, I sat outside, the crickets humming steady, and thought how strange it was that the worst season of my life had turned into clarity. Revenge didn't roar anymore. It whispered, remember, but move on. Summer arrived warm and clear. Work thrived again, and for the first time in years, I hired new staff without fear of what lay behind the paperwork. Liam visited once, wearing a worn jacket and a guilty smile. I'm doing better, he said. I paid off my debts. I still can't believe how far I let things go. I told him, people fall. What matters is who helps them stand again. He nodded. We shook hands. The old anger between us faded like smoke. That evening, while sorting mail, I found a thin red envelope. Court notice. Inside, a check, restitution for Marcus's forfeited assets. It wasn't a fortune, but it felt symbolic. The man who once tried to take everything now repaid me, dollar by dollar. I took that check straight to the local orphan fund and donated all of it. When the clerk asked the reason, I said, to close a circle. The local news ran a small segment. Businessman donates fraud settlement to charity. They asked for a statement, and I said only, peace isn't free, but it's worth the cost. That night, under quiet stars, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Lightness. I realized forgiveness didn't mean excusing someone. It meant refusing to carry their mistakes any longer. I walked through the house, turned off every light, and stood in the dark, unafraid. I was alone, yes, but for the first time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt deserved. Autumn brought crisp air and a strange message on my phone. Block number again. Against better judgment, I answered. Sophie's voice, soft but steady. Jack, I'm leaving the country. I just wanted to say goodbye. I said, you don't owe me that. I do. You were the only person who ever believed I could be better. Her voice trembled, then faded into static. I hope you find someone who sees you for who you are. The line clicked dead. I stood by the window for a while, watching leaves fall across the driveway. I felt neither grief nor joy, just finality. Weeks later, I received a legal notice confirming she'd filed for bankruptcy, selling what little she had left. That was her ending, not prison, not scandal, just quiet consequence. I visited Harvey's office one last time. We shook hands. You did well, he said. Most people in your shoes would have turned bitter. Maybe once. I said, now I just want quiet. Driving home, I realized revenge stories never really end with victory. They end with acceptance. Mine was simple. A man who lost trust found truth and learned peace. I parked, walked inside, and lit the fireplace. The crackle filled the house that had once been built on lies. Now it burned only warmth. The following spring, I received an invitation, an award from the local business council for integrity and resilience. The irony made me laugh. I accepted anyway, not for pride, but to show what surviving looked like. At the ceremony, people clapped, cameras flashed, and I stood behind the podium holding the plaque. I used to think strength meant building walls. I said, turns out, it means letting truth tear down the wrong ones. The room went quiet, then rose in applause. Afterward, Erin found me in the crowd. You still get more views than half my stories, she teased. People love a man who fought back with evidence. I smiled. Tell them it wasn't revenge, it was rebuilding. When I returned home that night, I opened my safe. The red folder still waited. I added the plaques program inside and whispered, we did it. Then I locked it again. Later, I stood outside beneath the stars. The house lights glowed warm behind me. I thought of everything, betrayal, lies, revenge, and finally, peace. Maybe that's what freedom really was. Not forgetting what happened, but living better because it did. The months after the award felt almost unreal. People treated me like a symbol. The man who caught his betrayers. But I didn't feel like a symbol. I was just someone who learned late that love without truth is a house built on sand. One morning, as I reviewed blueprints at the office, my assistant handed me an envelope. No return address, she said. Inside was a shorthand written note. They say truth sets you free. You set me free too. Liam. I smiled quietly. He'd found peace in his own way. Maybe that was a final piece I needed to forgive myself for trusting him. Later that day, I passed a bakery downtown, the same one Sophie now worked in. Through the window, I saw her arranging pastries, hair tied back, face calm. For a second, she looked up and saw me. We didn't wave. We didn't smile. We just looked at each other through the glass. Two people who had survived the wreckage they created. I walked away without anger. That silence between us was the cleanest goodbye we'd ever shared. That evening, Aaron called to ask if I'd ever tell my story in a book. I laughed. Some stories are meant to end quietly, I said. Mine already has. But that night, I'd open my journal and write a single sentence. I loved her once. That love ended, but I didn't. Then I closed it and finally completely slept. Winter came early. Snow blanketed the streets, softening everything. My company thrived, my employees got bonuses, and the crew threw a Christmas party that felt honest. No pretenses, just laughter. As people toasted, one of the foremen raised his glass. To Jack, who taught us that strength doesn't mean fighting. It means finishing. Everyone cheered. I smiled, genuinely this time. I realized revenge had become irrelevant. The Real win was stability, the kind that no one could manipulate. After the party, I walked home alone through falling snow. Every light shimmered against the ground, and I felt gratitude in a way I hadn't for years. The air was crisp, sharp, clean. When I reached my porch, I noticed something odd, a small box sitting near the door. No note, no label. Inside was my old wedding ring, polished and shining. Sophie must have returned it. For a long time, I just stared at it in my palm. Then I placed it on the mantel next to the photo from our early years. Not as a symbol of pain, but of proof I'd survived it. Later, I lit a fire, sat back, and whispered to the room. We're finally done. The flames flickered bright and soft, carrying the last of that chapter into ash. A year later, Erin invited me to speak at a conference about resilience. At first, I refused. Then she said, "Your story changed people. It made them believe truth can win." I went. Standing before the audience, I told them not about betrayal, but about rebuilding. The hardest part of revenge, I said, is realizing it won't make you whole. Only peace does. The room fell silent. Then applause began, gentle, respectful, understanding. After the talk, a woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "My husband had debts for years," she said. "Your story helped me see it wasn't my fault." I shook her hand and told her what I'd learned. We can't control who lies to us, but we can control who we become afterward. That night, I sat in my car before driving home and looked at the ring on the mantel in my mind. Once, it had been a symbol of loss. Now it was just metal, harmless and still. I started the engine, turned on the radio, and let music fill the silence. The song playing was one Sophie used to hum. For the first time, it didn't hurt. It just felt like another memory, soft around the edges. Spring returned again, and with it, clarity. The past 2 years had been slow healing, like bones mending after a long break. I had rebuilt everything that mattered, my company, my peace, my trust in my own judgment. One afternoon, Aaron called one last time. They're making a documentary on real-life betrayals. They want you as a consultant. I laughed. I'm not sure I want to live it twice. She said, "You already did. That's why they need you." I agreed, but on one condition, that they focus on truth, not revenge. She promised. Filming began months later. When I watched the finished version, I saw my younger self on screen through reenactments, a man confused, heartbroken, desperate. But when the final scene played, me walking away from the lake where I threw the phone, it felt poetic. The credits rolled and Aaron's voice narrated. Sometimes revenge is just a long road back to yourself. The audience clapped. I sat there quietly, feeling peace settle deeper than applause ever could. That summer, the film premiered online. Messages poured in from strangers, people who'd found strength, courage, or simply comfort in knowing truth could survive deceit. I didn't respond to all of them, but I read every word. One message stood out. Thank you for proving that love's betrayal doesn't define us, it frees us. That night, I walked outside barefoot. The grass was cool, the air sweet with June. I looked up at the stars and thought about how everything, the phone, the lies, the courtroom, had all led to this stillness. The red folder still sat in my safe, untouched for months. I unlocked it, took it out, and flipped to the pages one last time. Then I tore them, piece by piece, and fed them to the fire. Watching them burn wasn't bitter. It was cleansing. When the last page turned to ash, I whispered, "Goodbye." The flames faded, leaving only embers. I stood there until the smoke cleared, and for the first time, I felt no weight on my chest. The story that began with betrayal ended with peace. The next autumn came quietly, golden and forgiving. The air carried that clean chill I'd always loved from construction sites in the morning before the noise began. I spent my days designing smaller homes now, not skyscrapers. I wanted simplicity, something that lasted because it was honest. One afternoon, Liam called again. "I got married," he said. His voice trembled the way it had when he confessed his part years ago. Her name's Claire. She knows everything about my past, and she said she wants to build something real. I smiled. "Then you already did what most never manage. You told the truth first." After the call, I thought about how people like us rebuild not by forgetting, but by choosing honesty every day. I'd stopped checking on Sophie long ago. Sometimes her name came up in small-town whispers, but it felt like talking about another lifetime. That evening, I walked the same trail near the lake where I'd thrown the phone. The water reflected the sunset, calm and gold. I skipped a rock across it and watched the ripples fade. My shadow followed each wave and then disappeared. I realized the past no longer chased me. It simply walked beside me quietly, like an old friend who knew when to stop talking. At home, I cooked dinner, opened a window, and let the autumn air drift in. I didn't play music. I didn't need to. The silence itself was a song I had earned. Winter came again, sharp and clear. One snowy evening, a local university invited me to give a guest lecture about integrity in business. I accepted reluctantly. Standing in front of those students, I saw young faces full of energy and trust, the same trust one once had. I told them my story in simple terms. "You'll meet people who promise the world," I said, "but always remember, truth doesn't fear proof." Afterward, one student asked, "Did revenge make you feel better?" I thought for a moment. "No," I said, "but protecting myself did. Revenge ends a lie. Peace builds a life." They applauded softly, not like fans, but like people who understood something deeper. On my way home, I stopped by the same bakery. Sophie wasn't there anymore. The new owner said she'd moved north to care for an aunt. That was all I needed to know. I stood outside afterward, watching snow fall on the streetlights. Life had kept moving, carrying both of us forward, separately but surviving. When I got home, I looked at the photo of our old life one last time and slipped it into a drawer. Not to hide it, but to rest it. I'd spent years building houses for others. Now I'd finally built one inside myself, made of truth, solid and quiet. Another year passed before something unexpected arrived. An envelope from a Canadian address. Inside was a single note and signed, "She never made it to Canada." For a moment, I just stared at it. The handwriting wasn't Sophie's. Maybe it was Marcus's old contact, or maybe it was someone playing with ghosts. Either way, the words didn't bring fear. They brought finality. I folded the note neatly and dropped it into the fire. The paper curled, blackened, and vanished. Watching it burn, I realized closure rarely comes from answers. It comes from accepting you'll never get them all. That night, I took a walk through the quiet streets. The moon hung low and full, reflecting on the wet pavement. Every sound, the wind in the trees, the crunch of my boots, felt alive again. I remembered what I'd told those students. Truth doesn't fear proof. I smiled because now I finally believed it. Back home, I stood by the window and whispered, "Rest, Sophie. Rest, Marcus. Rest, all of it." The phone in my toolbox stayed dead and silent. That silence was my final message. Spring brought color back to the world. Flowers rose from places I thought were dead. And maybe that's how healing works too. It grows in cracks left by storms. Erin visited one afternoon. "I'm writing a new series," she said. "Stories of people who rebuilt after loss. You'd fit perfectly." I laughed. "You've told my story enough." "Maybe," she said, smiling, "but the world could use reminders." She asked, "If you could say one thing to your younger self, the man who answered that phone, what would it be?" I thought for a long moment. I'd tell him not to fear truth. It hurts, but it saves you. Erin nodded, her eyes soft. That's the ending I needed. After she left, I sat on the porch until the sun went down. The air smelled like rain and new life. I realized the story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebirth. The world keeps turning, even when trust breaks. And somehow, if you're lucky, you do too. A year later, I sold the house. I didn't need it anymore. I bought a cabin by the lake, the same one I used to escape to when everything collapsed. The first night there, I opened every window. The breeze carried the scent of pine and still water. No buzzing phones. No lies waiting to ring. Just quiet. I sat outside with a cup of coffee as dawn began to rise. The sky turned soft gold, the kind of color that makes you believe in beginnings. I whispered to the world, "Peace sounds like silence." And it did. The wind rustled through the trees, the lake shimmered, and I smiled. The man who once trembled over a buzzing phone was gone. In his place stood someone steady, someone who knew that revenge wasn't about hurting back. It was about never being fooled again. The past was finished, the story complete. I walked down to the water, let my reflection meet the morning light, and said the final words I've been waiting to speak since that first betrayal. "I'm free." The ripples carried the words away, and the world answered in silence. Fade to black. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.